Okay. I'm going to do a different share. I'm sweating. I don't mind telling you. There we go. All right. So I have my white paper, I have my ruler, I have my pencil, I'm ready to go. Let's take this ride. What I'm gonna walk you through is how to, and believe me, I'm not the only teacher on the planet. There's many. YouTube is a resource. If what I say, or if you're not in class or whatever, you have the ability to go find your answers. So here we have two forms that are next to each other. One is in front of the other. So I'm going to walk you through how to make that happen and how to deal with that challenge. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through how you can cut into a block or a cube to create three-dimensional shape, three-dimensional form, I should say, of a letter. That's just one subject. So there are two examples here, and hopefully I'll remember how to do it smoothly so we can make sense of it. One thing I will say, what is the first thing that we do with any linear perspective drawing? What's the first step? Horizon line. For this one, I'm going to ask you to draw the horizon line, and always remember flush with the side. Draw that horizon line closer to the top of your paper. This is a little tip that works. So this horizon line is going to be high on the sketchbook page or the paper or whatever. The next thing that we're going to do is what? What do we need with 1-point linear perspective, Reagan? Vanishing point. And one thing that we're going to do a little different is instead of putting the vanishing points right in the middle, we're going to put it to the right or to the left. I just made mine kind of like a dot, but don't feel like you have to make it that wide. Keep it a point. Okay, so now I'm going to begin to construct the front of my form by drawing what, Tucker? Number 2. Yes, how many parallel horizontals? Go ahead, Stuart. Tucker, pay attention to what I'm saying. I just said he could do that. How many parallel lines to make the front of the cube? And you just said 2, right? Yeah. 2. And I'm going to make 2 forms. So actually, I'm going to have 4. So I want to make these kind of wide. So I'm going to go 1 here, 1 here. I don't know. 1 here, 1 here. Okay. So I've drawn 4 parallel lines for 2 forms. Horizontal parallel lines. Now what am I going to draw, Chase? Excellent. So using my ruler flush with the top of my paper, because it helps me to draw them perpendicular. And in the video, I went into a little explanation of how architects do this using these 2 implements. They use a T-square and a triangle to slide back and forth and make those lines. And in the absence of having those for everybody, because of the tables being grouped in 4, you can't possibly do this or guarantee everybody's going to be able to. We can use the ruler strategically by placing it flush with the top, perpendicular with the top when I want to make those lines. I'm going to make this one and this one. Whoop. Tough when you start having limited vision because of aging. But need my glasses all the time. All right, and I'm gonna make this one overlap the front or the previous one. These rulers are very inexpensive and they're flexible, which can be tricky sometimes. Now what am I gonna do? What's the next part of creating the form? What's the next part? How about, is Seneca here today? Seneca, do you remember? I didn't think so. That's why I was checking to see if you were here. Fiona, were you here? Do you remember the next step? Yes. Very good. So on every corner or vertice, sometimes we use those words just to reinforce the math concept. People in education love it when we make connections to reinforce your other subjects, because really everything is related. And I'm gonna try to line it up and carefully, drawing lightly. I remind you to draw light because we have to do a lot of erasing, and if we draw too dark, it gets very difficult. All right, so all the corners that I can, that are not gonna cross over the face, I will draw to the vanishing point. Now, how do I stop the form? How do I figure out how wide it is? What do I need to do now? I start over again. I go back to the horizontal. Of course, there's more than one way to do this, but I'm going to start back with horizontal, and I'm going to draw a horizontal line connecting the two lines that are on the top or that are first. Horizontal. Then I'm going to draw the horizontal line for this form. Horizontal. Now this form is directly in front of this vanishing point, so there's no more to do on there because I'm looking at it straight on. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up some of the extra, and where it overlaps this one, I'm going to get rid of that and try to get some of those lines that are unnecessary or I don't need anymore because my form is basically constructed. I'm going to do that. Clean it off. If at the end of class you have a lot of eraser crumbs, please try to just wipe them off the table. I'm thinking more for the, all right. So that's one form. And then I noticed back here, I've got an opening. So what type of line would I do? Would I just go like this? No, because that doesn't meet the rules of vanishing point, horizontal, or vertical. So it can't be horizontal because I've already done that. And it can't be orthogonal, vanishing point, because I've already done that too. So that only leaves one other choice. Lauren? Vertical, exactly. So line it up with the corner, and I don't have to go all the way down because I'm stopped by the top of that form. Now I have nice cubes, and I'm going to erase this. To begin my cutting out, imagine you got a carving tool, or you have a chainsaw or some kind of skill saw, like you do in tech, when you guys will get to tech. And I want to carve out, but first I'm going to decide, all right, let's make the front of this form into a letter, because a letter is an easy thing for me to think about. And I'm going to choose a letter that is difficult because of the rounded part of it. And I'm going to just try to create the letter. Let's see, I'm going to do an R. I don't know. I could have chosen any letter. And I'm going to try to draw what I would cut out of the front of that letter to create the R. Do it lightly, and then I can make my lines a little bit better. So obviously, the first time around isn't always the best. As you can see, that's how we revise our initial attempt. And I think that's pretty much how I want it. I could use my ruler for this one and line that up. Okay. And make it straight. All right, so now I see, all right, I have a corner here. I'm going to cut away that, make that open. Cut away, AKA also known as erase. And I'm going to erase the side of that. Get rid of it. I can even erase the corner of the form here. All right, so here's where it gets interesting. Line up my ruler with my vanishing point and see where my ruler hits various corners. So right away I can see a corner here. Does everybody see that my vanishing point is here, and I just pivot my ruler and see, where's it going to hit? Oh, there's a spot where it's hitting. I'm going to draw the line. I'm going to continue to pivot, corner, ruler, corner, vanishing point, draw the line. Continue pivoting, pivot it, pivot, pivot. Well, all right. The edge of the corner of the, reposition my paper, of the curve is going to give me that. And maybe step back and look at it, meaning see if anything starts to take form. Passes are at the door. Yes. So I don't like this one. I'm looking at this one and I think actually there'd be a parallel line here. Parallel with the other one, and it would probably go down inside of the form there. So you kind of have to make adjustments as you go along. This curve would be mirrored back here, mirrored or paralleled, or how else would you think of it? There. Round the back, round the front. And I'm going to leave that alone. And I think it looks pretty good. Now I'm going to do a backwards S just for fun, because I'm going to start to think about how would I carve out for an S. And it's the same idea on this one. Well, maybe that's too complicated. I won't do that. I'll keep it simple. Sometimes if you make your letters more boxy, and not curved, it will keep it more concrete in your mind and it will be easier. So if I had an S, I could carve out 2 rectangles and there's my S. Does everybody see that? If you want to, the best way to do it is just draw a line and see it. What's another rounded letter? P, D. We know that D can be made into a very line-like way. So there's my S. And what points will the vanishing point help me to make the interior of that? Well, do the same thing, line it up with your vanishing point. Look for where the corners match up or line up. And it's very simple when you think of it that way, and there you go. Now I've got an S, block letter. Now to emphasize, to make my letter even more convincing, I can add some line if I'd like to. So I could just put some stripes on it to make some more detail. I could, if I wanted to, I could put some stripes up on the top. But again, if I made the top in perspective, I want to continue with all the lines going to perspective. And then I can work in them from there. I could make these into bricks. Anybody ever notice the pattern of bricks and try to draw them? Kind of fun. This could be another type of material on the top of the S. I wanted it to look like construction material. And then we go on and on and on. So that's how you create 2 block letters. Adding shading will enhance shading values. So sometimes that helps you to make the form or the form more convincing to the viewer or more readable. And sometimes, you know, you can work in it in a lot of different ways. So we have what, 5 minutes of class? What I'd like you to do is think about, I'm gonna stop that share. Think about how you can get creative with your own, try to do it on your own. Try to, let me see if I can transition to this. And think about what you might add to it when you're ready to do your own composition. By the way, there are 2 other videos here. If that was not clear, sometimes people draw the letter and then just connect it. That's another method. So there's all different ways of approaching this, and you find what works best for you and what makes sense to you. Okay, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna